Hi one and all, I am Akshay, a student of first year, and I am here before you to present the second knowledge class of our esteemed and slowly growing knowledge society. And the topic of the time travel, as you all know, is the topic of the knowledge class, as you all know, is time travel. I would like to share a tale with you of a time traveler called John Titor. He was a person who claims to have traveled from year 2036, and he claims that he traveled to 1975. He claims to have been a person from the American Army whose aim was to bring a peace that was important for the American Army that was present in 1975. But instead of going back from 1975 to 2036, he went to 1998 to see how he was when he was young. So from 2000 to 2001, he spoke to many people on internet and he created a blog telling them that he was a time traveler from 2036. And yeah, he also predicted, but no one knows how he predicted correctly the reason for the Gulf War and the mad cow disease that spread in US. He also wrote a book, a John Titor Time Traveler's Tale, which was a 164-page book that contained 9 black and white pictures of his time machine and a manual that came with the time machine. Believe it or not, my friends, this story is true. The blogs that I am talking about are still there on the internet. This might be one of the most amazing tales told ever by mankind. So, traveling into the past seems improbable because time, as you know, travels only in one direction, that is forward direction. Physics, in terms of real physics, if we talk, this is referred to as arrow of time. I'd like to show you regarding this concept.
Arrow of time.
The arrow of time is just the fact that you can always orient yourself moving from the past to the future. You remember the past, you don't remember the future. You can cause things to happen in the future, but you can't cause things to happen in the past.
So, this concept of the arrow of time makes time a one-way street in which you can travel only in the forward direction. And this is explained by the second law of thermodynamics that states that universe moves from an orderly state to a disorderly state.
The reason why time has an arrow is a fundamental law of physics that says all things in the universe move from orderly states to disorderly states.
If you had a plate that was a nice plate that was put together in orderly, it breaks, it becomes more disorderly, that's very natural.
And if you try to restore order by gluing the plate back together, your actions release enough energy into the surrounding environment to create more disorder in the universe as a whole.
So really good what that video was about.
Basically, when the universe is moving from an orderly state to a disorderly state, and in the process of getting back this orderly state into the orderly way that I want, I will be eventually giving away more of disorder into the universe, right? So the energy would be so much that even more disorder would be created in the universe while we are in the process of getting back order from disorder.
So, when the arrow of time bends away, it creates an endless loop which is responsible for events happening over and over again.
You can imagine the gravitational field is so strong that space and time curl back on themselves. And you can start at one point, go forward in time, and come back at the point that you left.
When the arrow of time bends around to meet its tail, it creates an endless loop in which the same events happen over and over.
So if this is time curling back on itself, and the universe just repeats itself over and over again, every moment in time would just repeat an infinite number of times.
An endless loop would become pretty frustrating for anyone.
So I hope the video clearly explained what I was trying to say. So when we talk about time travel, there is a friendly word, very friendly word known as the paradox. Yeah, that is one of the examples.
The twin paradox is one
One of
paradox.
the examples, and other example of paradox is I'll show you. That is known as the grandfather paradox. Imagine yourself that if you were able to go back into a time when your grandfather was about to go on a date with your grandmother. Okay, so, and you know that your grandfather is a cricket buff. And when you go back into that time, you have a ticket of an India-Pakistan match, a couple tickets of an India-Pakistan match of a front row. So you give him and convince him somehow not to go on that date. Instead of going on that date, accompany you to that cricket match. So if you are able to convince him not to go on that date, yeah, you won't have gone.
I am going into the past, but I can't make any changes. So nature forbids me to make changes even if I time travel into the past. Right?
This is where someone goes back to the time of, for example, their grandfather. So imagine that I go back in time with a time machine and meet my grandfather in 1937. He's just about to go on a blind date with my grandmother. They've never met before. But actually, I convince him not to go on that date. He's actually interested in the races, and so I tell him that there's an exciting race with Seabiscuit that's coming up at the Santa Anita track. And so we go off together to that race. He never meets my grandmother. So what happens to me? How is it possible that I could have been born and then been able to go back in time, meet him, and stop myself from being born? So there's an example of an inconsistency. It's a loop in time that really doesn't make sense.
You just vanished. But physics explains that why these paradoxes can't happen. It is clearly explained in the 3 points that I will be telling you. One way is that nature doesn't allow anyone to travel into the past. Going into the past and making changes simply can't be done, as we all know. Another idea is the concept of parallel universe. Do you have any idea what a parallel universe is?
Parallel universe is created when you make a choice, right? That if you make a choice, yes, I'll do this.
Yeah.
And the other choice is happening in the parallel universe.
Yes, something must have happened in the other universe as well.
A different alternative is the strange idea of multiple universes.
One way of dealing with travel back in time is to say that you actually enter a different parallel universe after having made the journey back in time. So you don't affect the history of the universe from which you came. In effect, anything that can happen will happen. But the way it happens is by entering a parallel universe. Pretty bizarre thought.
The simplest way of going back into the future, as explained by our time guru, Mr. Albert Einstein. Mr. Albert Einstein is concept of time dilation. You must have heard of it. It's quite a familiar example. Yes. Do you know there is a person named Sethi? He is a Russian cosmonaut. He was placed into a space time, something was like rocket or something. He was made to travel into the orbit around the Earth at a speed of 17,000 miles per hour for around 803 days. And you know what the results were? When he came back, it was shown that the amount of time that traveled for us, though he was a little bit behind, but you won't believe that after traveling 17,000 miles per hour for 803 days, he was just a 50th of a second behind the time which we were traveling at. This is how small the variation was. Now suppose you are in so much of urge to travel in time. Let's say you want to travel 500 years into the future. You want it or not?
Yeah, definitely. But I don't know what will happen to me in between.
I tell you, don't worry. I won't vanish. So let's see what you have to do if you had to travel 500 years into the future.
You wanted to go 500 years into the future.
To move 500 years into the future, you'd have to move at 99.99% of the speed of light for 7 years.
When you get back, you'll have aged only 7 years. But everything on Earth will have aged 500. But one of
Still worried? What would happen if you travel 500 years? So, what he said that if you have to travel 500 years into the future in relatively shorter time, that is 7 years, you have to move at 99.99% to the speed of light. So till date, it is not possible. As such, there is no law of physics that states that you cannot go close to the speed of light. But till date, we haven't been able to, come up with a method by which you can go close to the speed of light. And even if you would have gone close to the speed of light, you won't have had enough fuels to, boost a rocket for 7 years to move 500 years into the future. And even if you would have had enough fuel, the rocket ship moving at 99.99% to the speed of light would have become so much heavier that even if it would have moved a millimeter further, it would have broken down. Yeah, so what we had begun with the tale of John Titor. You might find that what I said that time travel was possible, and now I am saying that since it is not possible because the means do not permit us to travel time. So yes, it was proven by an Italian detective, Mike Lynch, that this what was all about the Titor tale was all rubbish and fake. What this person did was that he found out that what those blogs were controlled by a person called John Rick Harbour, who is a brother of a computer expert Larry Harbour. This was all rubbish and fake. Titor didn't exist anymore. So you might feel that what happened when you travel back into time and you vanished even if you were not born.
When I go in future, what will happen to me in between?
Yeah. No matter how well you convince your grandfather, no matter how hardcore he was a cricket buff, but the love of your grandmother would surely attract him towards her. That somehow he would be able to go and meet her, and somehow your father, and then you would come into the environment, into the world.
But this was about traveling in the past. If I travel in the future,
you are traveling into the future. What you are doing, you are sitting, time is passing, you are traveling into the future, nothing else. If you have any doubts, let me show you a video that if you go into the past.
I'm just asking at right time in the time.
No, let me clear it. Now, even if you have doubts, why to keep them?
If you took a movie of things going on in your everyday life, like mixing cream into your coffee, and then you played that movie backwards, it would be perfectly obvious. Cream mixes into coffee, it doesn't unmix. That's the arrow of time.
the arrow makes time a one-way street of irreversible events. Something we know intuitively from our everyday experience. On a pool table, you can break, but don't expect the balls to realign on their own. You can scramble an egg, but you can't unscramble it.
If you scramble an egg, you would keep on scrambling it, but you don't have a method to unscramble. The egg has already got scrambled, but you can't unscramble. Clear?
This is where the entropy part came in, as Varshan just asked. The entropy part is emphasizing the fact that why it's only a one-way street. Scrambling the egg is creating disorder, but unscrambling it is creating order back from disorder. And that can happen with a lot of effort. But the problem is that in the process of making that effort, a lot of disorder will be already created. The whole point was that this can happen. You can skip, you can create a bridge. That can happen.
But you won't be at the same age.
You can be at the same age.
I'm going 50 years forward. But to go to 50 years forward, I have taken 7 years. So I have grown only 7 years. But I am 50 years forward in time.
You're not at the same age.
No, you have spent 7 years.
But in the frame of reference in which you are moving.
In that frame of reference, your age will be with respect to that frame of reference which is already in motion. So in that frame of reference, you have covered 7 years. But that frame of reference is traveled at such a pace that you've actually covered 50 years. Okay, so you have bridged 43 years back.
So what I had to do is done. Still, the concept of time travel is an unsolved mystery. If you have got the guts, solve it. Otherwise, these kinds of discussions will be.
Okay, thank you.
Before I end up, I would like to thank my friend Varun Oja, who has played a crucial role in making this a success. So yes, I would like you to have a round of applause.
And we would like to thank Anvesha ma'am for gracing this occasion. Please.
No, I really wanted to see the knowledge class क्योंकि इसका idea ही मुझे सबसे catchy लगा था that ये थे. You can stop recording.
No. ये तो.
Okay. No. And when I saw Varun's KC, it was really fantastic. And I'd really like him to take more KCs. But एक चीज़ है, when a person is taking the knowledge class, he is not your professor or something. And even if he's your senior, please don't call him sir. And don't keep back
in the knowledge class only.
Yeah, in the knowledge class only. बाकी का at your own peril है. Okay? And even the ones you are telling or explaining things to are not your students. The concept was, जो मुझे लगा था ये होगा कि everybody likes a certain topic and wants to share that information. जनरली जैसे आप हॉस्टल रूम में जाते हो तो दोस्तों के साथ बैठ के apart from all the normal things एक पर्टिकुलर कंस्ट्रक्टिव इशू के बारे में शायद बात करते हो. सो द सेम थिंग ऑन अ हायर प्रोफेशनल स्केल शायद यहाँ पे अगर कर सकते थे तो